They called it the most eroded place on Earth. A landscape so damaged that the very soil, a fine, wind-blown dust called loess, would choke the Yellow River, turn the sky brown for miles, and trap 50 million people in a cycle of poverty and hunger. But here's what most people don't know. Between 1999 and today, something extraordinary happened here. Not with high-tech geoengineering. Not with some billionaire's moonshot. With terraces. Trees. And the work of millions of farmers who chose to bet on a different future. This is the story of the Loess Plateau restoration. The largest soil and water conservation project in the history of the world. And a proof, a living, breathing, satellite-imaged proof, that we can reverse desertification on a massive scale. To understand what happened here, you have to understand what the Loess Plateau became. The Loess Plateau sits in the heart of northern China. It covers about 640,000 square kilometers, that's roughly the size of France. The soil is loess, a fine, yellow silt deposited by wind over millions of years. It's incredibly fertile when managed well. But it's also incredibly fragile. For centuries, this region was China's breadbasket. But centuries of overgrazing, deforestation, and farming on steep slopes took their toll. By the mid-20th century, the damage was catastrophic. The plateau was losing soil at a rate of over 10,000 tons per square kilometer per year in some areas. To put that in perspective, that's a dump truck of soil washing off every single minute. That sediment flowed into the Yellow River, turning it into the muddiest major river on Earth. The riverbed actually rose above the surrounding land in some places, raising the constant threat of catastrophic flooding. And for the people living there, 50 million people across 4 of China's poorest provinces, it meant nothing but backbreaking poverty. Grain yields were pitiful. Farmers earned around $70 a year. Dust storms were so bad they regularly darkened the sky hundreds of kilometers away in Beijing. As one farmer from Gansu province described it, the wind would come and you couldn't see the sun. The only thing that grew was hardship. The World Bank called it one of the highest erosion rates in the world. Scientists called it beyond help. Enter a man named John D. Liu. He's a Chinese-American filmmaker who had come to China in the 1970s to work as a journalist for CBS. In 1995, he was filming a documentary on the Loess Plateau when he saw something that changed his life. The Chinese government, backed by the World Bank, was about to attempt something no one had done before. They were going to restore the entire plateau. In 1994, the first Loess Plateau watershed rehabilitation project was approved, funded by the World Bank's International Development Association. It was a pilot, a test to see if restoration at scale was even possible. Then in 1999, the Chinese government launched something even bigger, the Grain for Green program. The largest ecological restoration and rural development program in the world. Here's how it worked. The government said to farmers, stop planting crops on steep slopes. Stop letting your goats destroy the hillsides. Instead, plant trees. Plant grass. Let the land rest. And in exchange, the government would give you grain. Cash. Tax breaks. Every year. For as long as your land was under restoration. Farmers in the Yellow River Basin received 100 kilograms of grain per year for every mu of land they converted, that's about 1,500 kilograms per hectare. Plus 20 yuan per mu in cash subsidies. It wasn't charity. It was a contract. The farmers were being paid to become stewards of restoration. And over the next 2 decades, it would reach over 30 million households. So what did the actual work look like on the ground? 3 main strategies. First, terracing. Instead of farming straight down the slope, which lets rainwater wash soil into the valley, they built terraces. Flat steps carved into the hillside, each one holding water and soil in place. Terracing reduced labor, improved yields, and turned previously unproductive land into valuable cropping areas. The terraces required new access roads, which meant vehicles and equipment could reach areas that were previously only accessible on foot. Second, ban free grazing. This was the hardest sell. For generations, farmers had let their goats and sheep roam free on the hillsides. But free grazing animals strip vegetation, compact soil, and prevent natural regeneration. The project banned it outright. Animals were confined to pens and fed cut fodder instead. It was controversial. But it was essential. Third, reforestation and natural regeneration. The farmers planted trees, mostly fast-growing species like black locust and poplar, along with fruit trees like apples and walnuts for income. But they also simply stopped destroying the land and let nature do the work. Natural regeneration accounted for a huge portion of the recovery. When you stop the assault, the land remembers how to heal. A 2024 study used rephotography, matching historical photos from 1925 to the present day, to document the transformation. The difference is staggering. Hills that were completely bare in the 1930s, covered in stunted scrub in the 1980s, are now lush forests. The same camera angle. The same location. A completely different world. And then, the numbers. Because this isn't just a feel-good story. It's one of the most cost-effective environmental investments in human history. 2.5 million people, lifted out of poverty across 4 of China's poorest provinces, Shaanxi, Gansu, and Inner Mongolia. Incomes doubled, from about $70 a year to $200 a year. Not because of handouts, but because diversified farming, fruit orchards, medicinal herbs, sustainable crops, was more profitable than scraping a living off eroded hillsides. Perennial vegetation cover went from 17% to 34%. In a landscape the size of France, that's an area the size of England that turned from brown to green. Sediment flowing into the Yellow River dropped by over 100 million tons per year. A network of small dams now stores water for towns and farms during dry spells. Grain output per person rose from 365 kilograms to 591 kilograms, better food security, not worse, even though cropland area shrank. Employment rose from 70% to 87%, with significantly more opportunities for women. One farmer in Shaanxi province who converted his steep wheat fields to apple orchard now earns more in a single season than he used to earn in 5 years. His sons, who had moved to the city for factory work, came back to help farm the family land. But the most powerful measure of success isn't in the spreadsheets. Peter Bridgewater, an honorary professor at the Australian National University who advised on the project, recalled, "All the birds returned." He meant it literally. As the vegetation recovered, wildlife came back. Insects, birds, small mammals, the whole ecosystem rebooted itself. The land didn't just become less eroded. It became alive again. And the carbon story is staggering. The restored forests and grasslands on the Loess Plateau have sequestered millions of tons of carbon, one of the cheapest and most effective carbon drawdown strategies ever documented. A 2017 study estimated that the Grain for Green program alone could sequester over 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide by 2050. This is not a side benefit. This is the point. When you restore ecosystems, you fix the climate, the water cycle, the soil, and the human economy, all at once. So what does this mean, for us? The Loess Plateau proves that landscape-scale restoration is not a fantasy. It's been done. It cost about $500 million across 2 World Bank projects, and generated returns in poverty reduction, food security, carbon sequestration, and water management that are valued in the tens of billions. But it also took political will, long-term thinking, and a willingness to pay farmers not to destroy the land, which is, when you think about it, one of the cheapest investments a society can make. As John D. Liu put it, the size of the solution needs to be equal to the size of the problem. And here's the uncomfortable truth we need to sit with: China's authoritarian system was able to push through this transformation in ways that democratic systems often struggle with. The Loess Plateau wasn't restored because everyone agreed nicely. It was restored because a central government decided it was going to happen, banned certain practices, funded the transition, and enforced compliance. But, and this is critical, the project also worked because it engaged local communities. It compensated farmers. It created real economic alternatives. The World Bank spent over 3 years just designing the project, working with villagers, officials, and scientists to figure out what would actually work on the ground. The lesson isn't, you need an authoritarian government. The lesson is, you need long-term commitment, adequate funding, community buy-in, and the courage to make hard changes. The Loess Plateau today is not a museum piece. It's a living landscape, producing food, supporting families, and continuing to heal. The same approach, grain for green, has been replicated across China. An estimated 20 million people have benefited from the model pioneered here. And the birds did come back. The Loess Plateau, China. 1994, present. 2.5 million people lifted from poverty. 17% 34% vegetation cover. 100 million tons less sediment in the Yellow River each year. The largest soil and water conservation project in the world. And it worked.